I'm Robin Gagnon.
And I'm Eric Gagnon, and we sell restaurants. We started the nation's largest restaurant brokerage firm, We Sell Restaurants, over a decade ago. You can find us online at WeSellRestaurants.com.
We're on the radio once a week with the leading authorities in this industry, talking about subjects trending in the restaurant business. Tweet your own questions on the topic while we're on the air to our Twitter handle, Sell Restaurants, or post them to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/We Sell Restaurants. If we don't get to your question, we'll follow up on social media.
Our goal is to satisfy your appetite for acquisition, feed the need for restaurant reality, and serve up a recipe for business success. If you have any ideas for our show or any comments or questions, you can email me. My email is simple. It's Eric, E-R-I-C, at WeSellRestaurants.com.
And today we're talking with a very familiar face on Food Network, Kerry Vincent, who is launching a brand new show on the channel. Kerry is the host of the new series titled Save My Bakery, which is premiering Wednesday, March 19th at 8 p.m. on Food Network. Armed with years of baking experience and a no-nonsense approach, Kerry is on a mission to reinvigorate local bakeries, putting them back on their neighborhood radar. In hopes of also mending the strained relationships behind these struggling establishments, Kerry helps families heal and put the pieces of their failing businesses back together.
From bolstering old donut recipes to improving employees' morale, Kerry turns poor pastries into delectable desserts and outdated spaces into truly sweet spots. Food Network superstar Kerry Vincent was inducted into the International Cake Exploration Society Hall of Fame in 2004 and the Dessert Professional Hall of Fame in 2010. She is a co-founder of the Oklahoma State Sugar Art Show and founder of the Grand National Wedding Cake Competition. A skilled designer, Vincent has invented unique techniques in sugar craft, which include the Vincent marqueterie and movement in stencil or painted sugar flounces and skirting.
I love that French pronunciation, Eric, you put on that.
Thank you.
Vincent Marqueterie. And now let's talk with Kerry. Okay, so Kerry, I'll just thank you again so much for joining us today to talk about Save My Bakery.
I'm happy to. And I'm happy that you've taken time out to do that, because without the support of radio stations such as yourself, nobody would even know.
Good. Well, Kerry, we love the premise of your new show as Restaurant Brokers, and it seems that there's so many people out there who go in this industry and they get in over their heads. Tell us a little bit about the show.
Mm-hmm. Well, the idea of the show really is for me to try to help bakeries in your area case, in the Philadelphia area. It's been a generational thing where they have been involved for decades with family members taking on the legacy from one to the other. And as they've taken on that mantle, they haven't really thought about updating things. They become very proud of what great-great-grandma did 4 decades, 5 decades, whatever ago. And unfortunately, they fail to realize as the time passes that ingredients change, and the real recipe that Grandma had all those decades ago is not really the same recipe anymore. They also hang on like drowning sailors to every single thing that they have in their menu lineup, which really doesn't help in this past decade where cake, desserts, and all sorts of baked goods have suddenly become remade and re-visualized and tarted up, and they look amazing in comparison to the rather pedestrian offerings of the past, because prior to that, for the last 60 years, nothing moved. Cake, bake was in slumberland. Now everybody who's anybody is trying to give a now everybody that's anybody is trying to give a facelift to whatever menu item they decided to focus on. And unfortunately, the old bakeries felt that their clientele would support them no matter what. But the sad thing is, and it's realistic, is that the old people who were supporting and continue to support are actually passing away, and that clientele base is shrinking, and they have forgotten that they need to attract new customers. And unfortunately for them, these days, young people are looking for ambiance and some kind of experience when they go to a bakery. They don't want to just buy the pretty thing. They want to feel like they're in a pretty place. And most of these places, well, all of the ones I'm dealing with anyway, are very old and haven't had a facelift forever. And so my thought is, in the actual direction of the show, is to not pretend that I can turn them around in 2 days. That's not possible. But I can light a fire. I can let them think about things. I can bring a new view to their life. I can change the front of their bakery. Then they suddenly have this cathartic moment where they look and think this thing that they have been attached to like an old slipper is no longer the place that they need to remember, that they're actually reinvigorated by having somewhere pretty to go to each day. And I think it really gives them a time to sit back and really evaluate what they haven't been doing. And I'm kind of the voice of reason that drops in like the good fairy and says, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you had conversations, between the generations? Because the young ones are on fire and the older ones have got their heels dug in, but they're the ones that have and control the financials. So it's a difficult road. You have these enthusiastic young people who want to spend the bank, and the other ones who, through caution, remember things like depression and so forth, and it's right on their minds. They don't want to be a casualty of that.
Well, I think you really raise an intriguing issue, and in fact, the general manager and senior VP of Food Network, Bob Tuschman, said a similar thing in his quote from your press release. For generations, bakeries were the backbone of communities across America.
Sure.
Save My Bakery takes on the challenge of rescuing these businesses and the families behind them. So why is it you think that these families are so often a part of the dynamic in the business? Do you usually see these multiple generations involved?
There's more of them out there than people really realize. Every small town across America has the generational something going on, whether it be the bakery or anything in any walk of life. When even a farmer who has a farm and wants to leave it to the eldest son, maybe the eldest son doesn't want it.
This is Eric and Robin.
Maybe they're sort of pressed into a corner where they have to be involved.
That's
hard because that person
and like
never
us
gets
on
the
Facebook
chance to fly.
Facebook.com
I left my home country 46
Follow
years
us
ago.
on Twitter
I
at Sell
just
Restaurants.
parents, I'm
We Sell
on a
Restaurants
plane
is your
and
industry
I'm off to
authority
England, and they said,
for
how long will you be
information.
gone? And I
We
said,
are
a
the
couple of
restaurant
years.
brokers, Eric and Robin Gagnon.
46 years later, I'm still on the road. So I understand the need for every person to walk their own destiny. Very particularly, I've lived in 9 different countries. I've experienced a lot of different cultures. And so it's interesting to me when I had a dad that was so far-seeing, because he just said, okay, I'm going to equip you lot, where with 5 children, with the nuts and bolts that make education and common sense. And when you're done, you're on your own, out there, you go and make a life, make me proud. He wasn't tough. He just was very pragmatic. And in the times, nobody expected to be handed a silver spoon. So, for me, I went from being on a station, which is the equivalent of a ranch, where my schooling was done with pedal radio, and here I am as a cake lady on national TV in the United States. It's almost a pinch-me dream thing. I didn't count on that happening, but I let my destiny take me where I thought it needed to do. And I think that applies to everybody in every kind of business they're in. But somehow or another, with some of these entities in business, and I'm not just zeroing in on the bakery, it happens with all sorts of things, hardware stores, you name it, little places in little towns. They start out and they're very famous, and then they're very famous for just being there. People find them on the internet and they go there maybe once and then they vanish. So to me, it was a matter of refocusing them and saying, well, okay, you can't believe that you still are the same person that your great-grandparents were, producing the same cake that they made, because the ingredients even themselves were different then. And so what you think you are tasting, what you think you are developing and baking is not exactly the same. So it's a bit of a myth in a sense. Nobody thinks about it from that point of view, but that's my point of view.
Well,
Sorry?
No, I was just going to say also the trends are changing so that,
sure.
30 years ago, no one would have even dreamed of gluten-free and trying to modify bakery recipes for that.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that all of these things are sort of flown over the head of the family bakery, the generational family bakery. And I just felt that in the way all of this evolved, the invitation to be a part of the show was intriguing. And then what part do I play? How do I help these folks? And so it was more about how to reignite the spark, to bring them on board for what's been happening in the last 12 years, which is when all of this celebrity in sweet and cake and dessert happened. Up until then, it was Sleepy Hollow. People were doing the same things in 1950 as they were in the early the 80s, 90s was when it started to get off the ground and make some changes. Even the big bakeries had their heels dug in. They didn't want to do anything new to rock the boat. And then with the advent of television, with tons of people turning into mini celebrities, running around doing cake and so forth, suddenly the tables were turned. It was not all about savory anymore. It was about cake as well. So none of them ever got on the gravy train. They still thought business as usual was okay. In fact, I'm not even sure that they thought, because I find most of them, it's like dad rules and everybody else does in a nice way. It's not, it's just the way it sort of comes down. But there's no meetings about what you do, no planning, no business plan. There is no plan. And so it was my thought that I should remind them, in order to do good business, you need to know what you're doing and to start thinking instead of just going by rote every day. And, the day went the same as the day before. And then they all say, well, we're so tired. Everybody hears that we're so tired. We work so hard. But you can work so hard that you're just spinning your wheels. And actually you might work less if you actually took time out to see that there were some labor-saving devices or labor-saving techniques that were out there. And anymore, education is so easily accessible with tutorials and things on the internet and so on. And even in newspapers and blogs and stuff address all sorts of issues that are helpful to these people. So in a sense, I think it's a shame that they don't take advantage of it, and if it needed me to drop by and spend some time with them and help them as best I can, and I don't promise to have every answer to every single person on the planet. God help us, nobody knows all of those answers. The only thing I can do is be a wake-up call, give them a new place, a front that they can come in and go, oh, wow, it's great to be here today. That in itself starts the brain ticking and thinking. And the younger folks in the business, the other employees, they start thinking about ideas and things. And so hopefully it will ignite a new start for them. Now, the proof of the pudding will be in 2 or 3 or 4 years, when they're so close to the wire financially, as to whether they can sustain it, because I can offer the start and get them thinking. Then it's up to them to pick up the traces and roll with it, and hopefully go in a direction that I think is a sensible direction, that they figure out what they need to do to keep it going. And I will be sitting watching with great interest, because the success of it to me will be, yes, an inspiration on television, but also success at the end of the yellow brick road.
That sounds great. We recently Kerry, we recently interviewed Alton Brown, and he talked a little bit about tough love approach to mentoring those in the industry. Are you going to be like, quote unquote, here, the pun will be intended, a tough cookie when it comes down to getting these bakeries in order?
I say how it is. I mean, I didn't, on Food Network Challenge, I was known as the tough judge. They called me the Simon Cowell of cake and all sorts of things.
I love that.
13 years that I was there. They even called me the dominatrix of decorating, which I found quite inspiring for a person at my age. But, you know, what the heck, who cares? I just feel that I don't have to shout. As one executive producer told me one time, Kerry, it's just how you look sometimes. So maybe the look says it all. I don't know. I'm not a television actor. I can only go from the heart and from my own experience. And I am hoping that the wake-up... I mean, if somebody's going to shout at me, I'm not going to shout back. Because I believe in going under the radar rather than over it, because shouting match is not my style. I don't use any of the new four-letter words that are fluffing around that been there, seen that, have no desire to go there, so it's not going to be one person described me as the new Gordon Ramsay. No, because I barely get a word out that says anything other than the bleepity-bleep words, so that's also not my style. All I want to do is to try to be the voice of reason, and I truly believe that people are a little tired of the screaming and yelling, and I think they quite like the idea of an older person with maybe some experience that will be helpful to the target bakeries, and I truly believe from the heart that I would like to see them obviously do very well. That would be the major coup for me, and I will tell them where I think that, you know, something needs to be fixed up, but it doesn't mean that I have to hit them over the head with a baseball bat, if that makes any sense.
That's perfect. And I was reading about some of the shows. One example is one you're doing in Pennsylvania. So you take on this, you're in a thriving neighborhood hotspot that's a bakery on the verge of closing its doors, and the shop has really grown stale. So what I found intriguing is that you're bringing in a contractor, you're guiding the owners through a complete remodel, and also giving the baked goods a facelift. So you're not just going in and saying, oh, let's change this recipe up. You're looking at operations, menu, design, decor, and all. This is a reinvent.
Well, there is a time limit, though. You know, constantly it is, there's only 48 hours, there's only 48 hours, and there is only 48 hours in reality because, you know, we're there for such a short period of time. I can but hope that actually the entire show has an outline, but it's pretty much ad-lib as much as what I see. And I try to be sensitive to... I mean, there's nothing worse than somebody snarling and huffing and blowing, coming in and telling everybody that's in the place that, you know, you did it all wrong.
Right.
Because obviously they've been there for decades, and so they haven't done things wrong all the way. They've just failed to see a new milepost that says, go this way, and they kept going, trudging down the same road. So my thought is to talk to them about their menu, talk to them about how to pretty it up. I cannot go through every menu item that they have. I pick certain ones and say, okay, I think this needs a bit of help. What do you think? I talk to the members of the staff and see how they feel, because sometimes their hands are tied because they can't have an opinion because they don't own the place, they just work there.
Right.
And so I listen to them, and sometimes they're quite on the ball. You know, they have ideas that they are young, they're curious, they go to the internet, they watch tutorials, and I can find out things from them like, hey, we saw this, but we can't do this.
You've been listening to Eric and Robin Gagnon and an interview with Kerry Vincent, host of the new Food Network show Save My Bakery. Great stuff from Kerry. We'll have more of this interview in just a moment. Stay tuned for more from We Sell Restaurants and the Restaurant Brokers.